Imagine stepping in for one of the most anticipated Malayalam films of the year and the interval drops. A movie about cybersecurity, about the invasion of individual privacy in this country, on how there is a moral responsibility of the government towards its citizens. And the moment you have sat halfway through this cautionary tale, your phone starts blaring. There is an alert on your phone that has a deafening noise in the cinema hall. You see around the theatre and see others also slightly taken aback with their phones ringing. Have the makers of this Malayalam film employed one of the most complicated marketing integrations where they have got access to every phone of the audience that buys their tickets? Is fiction crossing over to reality where Danny is breaking the fourth wall literally? I momentarily thought that officials were going to barge into the theatre and make us confess our internet activity. That is the oscillating experience I had when the alert intended for the safety of Indian citizens suddenly popped on my phone as I saw Patriot. An uncanny experience, especially when considering the themes of the movie. I just wanted to start with that small anecdote because, for a lack of a better term, हट गई थी. Patriot is directed by Mahesh Narayanan, a well-known editor and director whose work I genuinely love in Malayalam cinema. I enjoyed Takeoff, I loved See You Soon. I even think a mixed bag for many like Malik was exceptional. And even though I have not seen his two films recently, the announcement itself that Narayanan would be at the helm of affairs for a high-stakes globe-trotting thriller with Mammootty and Mohanlal reuniting after 18 years, I thought he could really pull this off despite the marketing prior to the movie's release being rather mediocre. This is a film that I wanted to love so bad, and I know many Malayalam cinema fans felt the exact same way because it was tough to even admit after stepping out of the theatre that you even liked this film. The movie focuses on Danny, played by Mammootty, who is a former representative of the Defence Research Wing of the Indian government. When he is told that the activity of a spyware called Periscope has been utilized by officials for invasive surveillance activities, the sensitive information that Danny holds can lead to dire consequences for those in positions of power. This includes not only politicians but nepo babies with monetary goals who will go to any length to make sure that Danny is not successful in exposing them. The journey that Danny embarks upon in revealing the truth with the aid of a former soldier, Colonel Rahim Malik, played by Mohanlal, forms the basic premise of Patriot. Here's me telling you the good and bad aspects of the film so that you guys can ultimately decide whether to watch this movie in theatres or not. Production quality and scale. There is one thing that extremely impressed me about this movie, and it was delivering on the basis of the genre it was, a globe-trotting thriller. Unlike several of the big-budget action movies that finish their production on sound stages, Patriot has been shot in identifiable locations, making at least the investment of this movie be clear in every frame in the 3 hours running time. The movie, while set in Delhi and shedding light on various facets of the government, actually felt like it was set in central Delhi, with major official offices and buildings denoting the high stakes that will follow in the film. There is an edge when the makers are insistent about making frames authentic, even when Mammootty is walking through the narrow streets of what seems like Nehru Place or Chandni Chowk, or travels in the Delhi metro. The act of evading the authorities, at least in the first half, seemed genuinely engaging. This is even true when the film shifts its narrative to London, Sri Lanka, and what seems to be modelled around a country in the Middle East. You understand the scale and intention of the filmmaker when you see several of the frames. The problem is that the cinematography by Manoj Nandan can be appreciated for the canvas it provides for a commercial film, but you conclude after you step out of the film that it's distracting fluff in an otherwise predictable, flat, and emotionally distant film. Even when it comes to being heavily reliant on CGI, especially when I look back at the sequence that involves a complicated fighter jet landing, the depiction of it on the big screen is extremely convincing. It also made me, on a side note, conclude that if stars like Mammootty and Mohanlal can shoot in real locations, every star in India could if they wanted to. This crowd control logistical nightmare is something I acknowledge, but there are no excuses for movies that deserve scale to be entirely shot in digital backgrounds and for the makers then to complain that the audience's criticism is harsh. However, everything becomes immaterial if the storytelling is weak, and I think while I will be found mostly ranting in the review, I think it was important to note that the film is visually stunning from a scale POV. Terrible action choreography. One of the most frustrating elements of Indian cinema that I just cannot get around or understand is this adamant nature of filmmakers to still hold on to the memory of what legends were capable of physically at their prime. Filmmakers almost want to ensure that they can sell the idea to the audience that acting legends have actually access to the elixir of life. So they may be 70 and above in age, but this is a mere numerical value because they are fully capable to eliminate and neutralize hundreds of goons with ease. This is something that can still be masked through intricate camera work, something that I saw executed with Mammootty in Bhishma Parvam. But I think it's important to acknowledge that Mammootty should not be expected to engage in complicated action choreography that should be reminiscent of Tom Cruise from Mission Impossible. It was absolutely distracting to see the terribly edited action sequences in movies like Turbo and Bazooka, and here we get more of the same. The problem is that some of the intricate action choreography actually seems like a part of another movie entirely. It's this forced nature to integrate a combat sequence assuming that a commercial movie of this scale requires it, versus Mammootty as Danny, who should be for this tale in a, well, psychological and intellectual upper hand against the enemies. There are sequences that include one where Mammootty gets into a scuffle with people in a terribly crowded market. It's so choppily edited that you don't understand how the sequence started and ended. Another one is set in which looks like straight up a C-17 Globe Master, where Mammootty becomes this massy hero, and the sequence to mask his lack of ability physically employs shaky cam and incessant cuts where you can't even make out what is happening. To make matters worse, the sequences have these flickering lights to distract you even further. This nature of terrible action choreography continues in this movie with a car chase sequence that just lacks a cohesive structure. The use of green screen and body doubles becomes so evident, and it continues in the climax, where in computer server rooms one is engaging in absolutely unnecessary physical scuffles. The film wastes so much of time in these long drawn out, poorly choreographed action sequences that you conclude it would have been better to focus on the personal stories of characters, to emotionally immerse the audience, versus this adamant nature to keep on setting up different action sequences in several locations. The brilliance of a face-off between characters like Sherlock and Moriarty is that it is a battle of wits, intellect and psychological warfare without even raising a finger. That kind of dynamic would have been far more effective than expecting Mammootty to be the man with the brains, but also Hrithik from War. This would have also cut down on the running time significantly and made this movie a tighter edit than the 3-hour slog that it became. There is only one action scene that is exceptionally choreographed and executed, and that involves Lalitan in a hospital, where it is commendable what he pulls off in an isolated space like an elevator. Absolutely praiseworthy on what the legend could do even at this age, and it's one of the rare occasions where the action actually is staged and performed with attention to detail and you feel the stakes at hand. This sadly is one glimmer of hope out of the many tiring sequences to sit through. Moments of fan service. It's absolutely undeniable that one is becoming giddy with joy when they see the two pillars of Malayalam cinema appear on the big screen after 18 years. I mean, I, who is a noob when it comes to the years that I've been watching Malayalam cinema, could not help but clap as the two hands met on the big screen, creating an alliance that can fight for the right cause. There is great joy in the fleeting moment to see the two legends with absolutely zero ego share screen space together and serve the purpose of the story. The bummer and irritation among audiences stemming from the fact that the storytelling itself was not worthy enough for this weight. I'll be honest, when it comes to performances, it does not demand a lot emotionally from someone like Mammootty. The film is filled with exposition and long shots of, well, characters just walking in grand locations. Mammootty as Danny is tactical, but he simply serves the story. Mohanlal gets some of the most stylistic moments in the film, and there is this one brief moment you may have noticed where Lalitan just looks over to the side, distraught at his predicament physically as Danny provides him comfort. It's that moment of camaraderie that just showcased to me what the potential of this movie could have been had it laid more focus on the characters versus this elusive threat of Periscope that forever takes to get to the point. Honestly, the supporting cast is satisfactory at best. Kunchako Boban is merely being instructed on what to do and where to go throughout the film. Nayanthara barely features in this narrative, and Darshana Rajendran's subplot is paced through as if it were a mere montage versus something of significance. If there was one performance that had potential and glimpses of a worthy force to go up against, it's Rajiv Menon playing the role of a minister called JP. The sad reality is that in this 3-hour running time, you don't feel overwhelmed. You don't feel you are in awe of the storytelling. You just coast through. Information being dumped at you, making you genuinely frustratingly exclaim at the screen, "Please get to the point." TRP reviews also have the same problem. Hammy performances and too many moving elements. You know how much I love Fahadh Faasil, but I never imagined that there could be a situation in Malayalam cinema where he would almost be instructed to do the same antics that work for other movies. Fahadh as Shakti almost seems like he had been instructed by Mahesh Narayanan. You know what you did in the Vikram interval where you were shouting and reprimanding Kamal Hassan? Yeah, we want that tone throughout this film. Fahadh is found shouting and yelling in every scene with this physical jitteriness, this impatient, overconfident and entitled boss that just becomes reminiscent of the theatrics we have seen versus what should work in this film. I never thought that I could sit through a movie and wholeheartedly feel like Fahadh just did not work in this movie. It reminds me of how terribly typecast actors like Pankaj Tripathi and Nawazuddin Siddiqui were when they got commercial success, almost making audiences feel like filmmakers were instructing these actors to do more of the same just because it connected with the audience in another movie. The biggest problem is that the core of this movie, the invasive surveillance practices employed by the organization through the spyware Periscope and how it affects individual lives, comes in far too late, and even when it does arrive, it is presented through such a fast-paced montage that you conclude that even the filmmaker did not give it the weight and time it deserved. Through many portions of this globe-trotting thriller, you wondered why the film is not coming to its point, its hook of the individual lives ruined by such surveillance. It makes you impatient as a viewer. What is even more irritating is that Danny, while being extremely intellectual and capable, is almost surprised on how things are getting out of hand, while casually dispersing sensitive information to key government officials and even going on a public platform to expose the company that sponsored the event and being shocked that he's being escorted off stage. The film took the shape of becoming a PSA but told in the most boring way possible, almost making one assume that the makers had a good movie one-liner and extended it into a 3-hour feature film but did not know what to do with it. You don't want to diss it as being trash because it is far from it, but you can't help but be frustrated at the opportunity lost on a relevant theme that could have been explored in a way more effective fashion, especially when taking into account a reunion of two legends after 18 years. And that was the video, guys. Write down in the comments below what you thought about Patriot. Please don't forget to follow me on Instagram. The handle's right in front of you. Follow me at JammyPants4. Also, please support us by smashing the like button and subscribing to our channel for weekly content ahead. Thank you for watching.